The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its crystalline walls reaching toward a dome that displayed the swirling nebulas of distant star systems. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, each area carefully climate-controlled and atmosphere-regulated to accommodate the diverse needs of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Ambassador Sarah Chen adjusted her simple black suit as she walked toward the central speaking platform. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space, drawing attention from beings whose ancestors had been conquering star systems when Earth was still cooling from its formation. The Zephyrian delegation watched her with their 4 compound eyes, their crystalline bodies refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. The massive Krogan representatives shifted their rocky bulk, creating rumbling sounds that vibrated through the floor. Sarah had served as Earth's primary ambassador for 12 years, ever since humanity had been grudgingly accepted into the Council. She remembered those early days when human ships were considered primitive, when their technology was dismissed as crude, when their very presence at the galactic table was seen as an amusing novelty. Today, everything would change. High Chancellor Vextar of the Andromedian Empire called the session to order. His serpentine form coiled around his floating throne, scales shifting from deep purple to angry red as he addressed the assembly. "We convene today to address the ongoing territorial disputes in the outer spiral arms," Vextar announced, his voice carrying through universal translators to every species present. "The human delegation has requested to present new territorial claims, though we must question whether such a young species truly understands the complexities of galactic politics." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The hegemony of eternal stars, led by beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form millennia ago, pulsed with dismissive light patterns. The Void Hunters, mechanical entities from the galaxy's dark regions, emitted static bursts that translated as derisive laughter. Sarah reached the speaking platform and activated the holographic display. 3-dimensional star maps materialized around her, showing the current territorial divisions of known space. Human space appeared as a modest green cluster near one edge, dwarfed by the vast empires that dominated the galaxy's prime real estate. "Honored council members," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. "For the past 50 years, humanity has followed every protocol, respected every boundary, and honored every treaty established by this body. We have contributed resources, shared technology, and participated in joint defense initiatives against external threats." Chancellor Vextar's scales rippled with impatience. "Ambassador Chen, while we appreciate humanity's efforts, this session is intended to address serious territorial matters. Perhaps human claims can be reviewed in a lesser committee." "I believe what I have to present will interest the full council," Sarah replied, manipulating the holographic controls. The star map zoomed out, revealing regions of space that most council members had forgotten existed. "During our 50 years of membership, human exploration fleets have been quite busy. While other species focused on the galaxy's core regions and established territories, we turned our attention to areas you considered worthless." She highlighted vast swaths of space beyond the outer spiral arms. The dark nebula regions. The radiation wastes. The gravitational anomaly zones. The regions you call the Deathlands. A new murmur spread through the chamber, though this one carried a different tone. The ethereal collective, beings of living gas from the galaxy's upper dimensions, began glowing with concern. The Silicon Brotherhood's representatives made clicking sounds that indicated rising anxiety. Sarah continued, "What you didn't realize is that these regions aren't dead zones. They're resource goldmines that your species simply couldn't access." The hologram shifted, showing massive mining operations, industrial complexes, and thriving human colonies in areas that glowed with dangerous radiation or twisted spacetime. "Impossible," hissed the Draconic Sovereignty's representative, a being whose scales had evolved to survive in the hearts of stars. "No biological species can survive in those regions. We tested them ourselves millennia ago." "You're correct," Sarah agreed. "No naturally evolved biological species can survive there. But humans aren't entirely natural anymore, are we?" The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of life support systems seemed to quiet as the implication of her words settled over the assembly. Sarah gestured, and the hologram displayed human workers operating in environments that should have killed them instantly. They moved through radiation fields that could sterilize entire planets, worked in gravitational anomalies that should have torn apart any known matter, and thrived in regions where space itself was unstable. Genetic modification, cybernetic enhancement, consciousness transfer, radiation adaptation, gravity manipulation technology, Sarah listed calmly. While you focused on maintaining your pure bloodlines and ancient traditions, humans embraced change. We became whatever we needed to become to survive and thrive. The Zephyrian delegate's crystalline form began resonating with harmonic frequencies that indicated extreme distress. You've corrupted yourselves. Abandoned your original form. We've evolved, Sarah corrected. And, in doing so, we've claimed approximately 60% of the galaxy's total landmass and 78% of its untapped resources. The numbers hit the chamber like a physical blow. Delegates began chattering, chittering, humming, and communicating in dozens of different ways as the reality of the situation became clear. Species that had considered themselves masters of the galaxy suddenly realized they controlled only the small portion that other species could actually survive in. Chancellor Vextar's scales had turned deep black, a color that indicated either rage or terror. This cannot be accurate. Our sensors would have detected such massive development. Your sensors are designed to detect life as you understand it, Sarah replied. Organic compounds, familiar energy signatures, traditional technology. But, when humans can survive as uploaded consciousnesses in mechanical bodies, or as radiation-adapted beings that feed on gamma rays, or as distributed intelligence networks that exist across multiple dimensions, your sensors simply don't recognize us as life. She manipulated the display again, showing the true scope of human expansion. Vast industrial networks stretched across previously unexplored regions. Massive space habitats floated in the hearts of neutron storms. Entire solar systems had been converted into computational matrices where millions of human minds operated at accelerated speeds. The territorial claims we're presenting today aren't requests, Sarah continued. They're notifications. We're informing you of what we already control, in the interest of maintaining the diplomatic relationships we've worked so hard to build. The Krogan representative, whose species had once been considered the galaxy's greatest warriors, rumbled in their stone-like language. The translation came through clearly. How many of you are there? Sarah smiled for the first time since taking the platform. That's difficult to calculate. Human consciousness can be copied, merged, split, and distributed. A single individual can exist in multiple forms simultaneously. Conservative estimates suggest there are currently somewhere between 12 and 15 trillion human-derived consciousnesses operating throughout the galaxy. The number was staggering. The combined population of all council species was approximately 800 billion. Humans, in their various forms, outnumbered the rest of the galaxy's intelligent life by more than 15 to 1. This is madness, whispered the representative from the Psionic Federation, beings whose mental powers had made them one of the galaxy's most feared species. You've created an abomination. A plague of artificial minds. We've created survival, Sarah replied simply. When the Devourers attacked from dark space 5 years ago, who held the line while your fleets retreated? When the reality storms threatened to tear apart the Andromeda Gateway, who developed the technology to stabilize it? When the cosmic parasites began consuming inhabited worlds, who created the weapons that could actually harm them? The chamber fell silent again as delegates remembered each of those crises. In every case, human forces had appeared seemingly from nowhere, wielding impossible technologies and displaying capabilities that defied understanding. At the time, most species had assumed humans were simply more resourceful than expected. Now they understood the truth. Every time the galaxy faced an existential threat, humans saved it, Sarah continued. We never asked for recognition or rewards. We simply acted because we considered ourselves part of the galactic community. But, that community has never truly accepted us, has it? Chancellor Vextar's voice carried a tremor that hadn't been there before. What are you saying, Ambassador? Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment that would reshape the galaxy forever. I'm saying that humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We're also withdrawing from all mutual defense pacts, trade agreements, and diplomatic accords. The explosion of sound that followed was unlike anything the council chamber had ever experienced. Dozens of species spoke, shouted, sang, and shrieked simultaneously. Emergency lights began flashing as delegates' emotional states triggered their life support system's crisis protocols. You cannot simply leave. Vexstar's scales were now cycling rapidly through colors that indicated panic. The treaties, the agreements, the interdependencies will all be honored during a 6-month transition period, Sarah interrupted. We're not monsters. We won't leave you defenseless or economically devastated overnight. But, after that transition period, humanity will pursue its own interests without regard for council policies or preferences. The ethereal collective's representative pulsed with desperate light patterns. The outer rim defenses, the trade networks, the research sharing protocols, your departure will leave massive gaps in our infrastructure. Then, you'll need to fill those gaps yourselves, Sarah replied. Or perhaps reconsider how you've treated the species that's been filling them for you. She began walking back toward the human delegation's seating area, but paused at the edge of the speaking platform. There is one other matter you should be aware of. The chamber, which had been erupting in chaos, slowly quieted as delegates realized she wasn't finished. During our 50 years of membership, we've maintained detailed records of every council decision, every vote, every private agreement. We know about the Zephyrian slave colonies in the Dark Nebula regions. We know about the Silicon Brotherhood's illegal consciousness experiments. We know about the secret agreements to limit smaller species' expansion rights. We know about the planned genocide of the Harmony Singers because their music was deemed aesthetically displeasing. Each revelation sent shockwaves through specific sections of the chamber. Species that had thought their secrets were safe suddenly realized that humanity had been watching and documenting everything. We've never acted on this information because we respected the Council's authority, Sarah continued. But, after our withdrawal, we'll consider ourselves free to share this data with interested parties. The oppressed species you've kept under your control, the galactic media networks, the independent worlds you've been exploiting. Chancellor Vexstar's voice was barely above a whisper. You're threatening to destroy the galactic order. We're threatening to reveal it, Sarah corrected. The question you need to ask yourselves is whether that order deserves to survive. She reached the human delegation area, where her small team was already packing their materials. The other delegates watched in stunned silence as humanity prepared to walk away from the table they had spent decades earning a seat at. Ambassador, called out the representative from the Harmony Singers, a species of crystalline beings whose songs could influence the emotional states of other life forms. What happens to species like ours? The smaller civilizations who depended on human protection? Sarah paused in her packing. This was the question she had hoped someone would ask. Any species that wishes to maintain friendly relations with humanity is welcome to establish independent diplomatic contacts. We'll consider defense pacts, trade agreements, and mutual cooperation accords on a case-by-case basis. The implication was clear. Smaller species could abandon the Council and seek human protection instead. Given humanity's revealed capabilities and resources, it would be a tempting offer for many civilizations. You're trying to steal our client states, accused the Draconic Sovereignty's representative. We're offering alternatives to species who might want them, Sarah replied. Whether they accept is entirely their choice. The human delegation finished their packing and began walking toward the chamber's exit. Behind them, the delegates erupted into arguments, accusations, and desperate planning sessions. Some species were already sending discreet signals to their home governments, reporting the crisis and requesting new instructions. As Sarah reached the massive doors that led out of the council chamber, Chancellor Vexstar called out one final time. Ambassador Chen. What will humanity do now? What are your intentions for the galaxy? Sarah turned back one last time to address the assembly. We're going to do what we've always done. Survive. Adopt. Grow. Explore. The only difference is that we'll do it without asking your permission first. The doors sealed behind the human delegation with a sound like thunder. In the chamber they left behind, the greatest powers in the galaxy began to truly comprehend the magnitude of what had just occurred. The species they had dismissed as young and primitive had revealed themselves to be the galaxy's dominant force. The beings they had tolerated as junior partners had been protecting and supporting them for decades without recognition. The civilization they had never quite accepted as equals had just announced their intention to chart their own course through the cosmos. And, for the first time in galactic history, the Council found itself facing a future without human support, human resources, or human protection. Outside the chamber, Sarah Chen allowed herself a small smile as she walked toward the human diplomatic ship. The hardest part was over. Now came the real work, building a galaxy where humanity could finally reach its full potential, unrestrained by the fears and prejudices of species who had never understood what humans were truly capable of becoming. The galaxy would learn to function without humans at the table. The question was whether it would survive the lesson. 3 months had passed since humanity's dramatic withdrawal from the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was beginning to fracture. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet stared at the tactical display in his command ship's bridge, watching red warning icons multiply across the holographic star map. Each icon represented a crisis that would have previously been handled by human intervention forces. Now, those forces were nowhere to be found. Admiral, his communications officer reported, her crystalline form resonating with stress harmonics, were receiving another distress signal from the Kepler Mining Consortium. The Void Hunters have launched another raid on their asteroid facilities. Kethvar's internal light dimmed with frustration. Response time to the Kepler system? 14 hours at maximum burn, sir. But, our intelligence suggests the raids will be completed within 6 hours. Before the human withdrawal, this wouldn't have been a problem. Human response fleets had been stationed throughout the galaxy's trouble zones, often arriving at crisis points within minutes through technologies the Council had never fully understood. Now, those mysterious rapid response capabilities were gone, and traditional faster-than-light travel suddenly seemed painfully slow. Sir, the tactical officer added, we're also monitoring the situation in the Harmony Singer territories. The Silicon Brotherhood has moved 3 battle fleets to their border regions. Our analysts believe an invasion is imminent. The Admiral's form flickered between blue and red, colors that indicated both sadness and anger. The Harmony Singers had been under Zephyrian protection for 2 centuries, but protecting them would require pulling fleets from other critical positions. With human forces no longer filling the gaps in galactic security, every military decision had become a choice between multiple catastrophes. Any word from the Council emergency sessions? Kethvar asked. Chancellor Vexstar is calling for increased military coordination between member species, but the Krogan Empire refuses to commit ships outside their own territory. The Draconic Sovereignty is demanding territorial concessions in exchange for military support. The Ethereal Collective has withdrawn entirely to their home dimensions, claiming they need to contemplate the new cosmic order. Kethvar had seen this coming. For centuries, the great powers of the galaxy had competed with each other while relying on human forces to handle the problems none of them wanted to deal with. Now, with humanity gone, old rivalries were resurging just when unity was most needed. Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Zephyrian High Command. Put it through. The holographic display shifted to show High Commander Zextel, the supreme military leader of the Zephyrian Confederation. Her ancient crystalline form had developed fracture patterns that indicated centuries of stress, and new cracks seemed to be appearing as she spoke. Admiral, I'm ordering the immediate withdrawal of all Zephyrian fleets to defensive positions around our core worlds. Kethvar's light flashed with surprise. High Commander, that will leave our client states completely undefended. The mining consortiums, the research stations, the trade hub worlds will have to fend for themselves, Zextel interrupted. We've just received intelligence that changes everything. Show him the data. The display shifted to show a region of space that Kethvar didn't recognize. It appeared to be somewhere in the dark nebula zones that humans had claimed, but the scale was incomprehensible. Massive structures stretched across light years, industrial complexes that dwarfed entire star systems, and energy signatures that registered as small stellar events. What am I looking at? Kethvar asked. Human military infrastructure, Zextel replied grimly. This is just one of 17 similar installations we've detected in regions we previously thought were uninhabited. Our best analysts estimate that each of these facilities could construct a fleet larger than our entire navy within a matter of weeks. The Admiral's crystalline form went completely dark as he processed the implications. How is that possible? Automation on a scale we never imagined. Self-replicating construction systems. Matter conversion technologies that can transform raw stellar material into finished starships. And this is what they're willing to let us see. Our intelligence suggests these visible installations are probably just the manufacturing centers for their civilian operations. A new icon appeared on the tactical display, showing an incoming message from an unknown source. The communication protocols were human in origin, but the signal was coming from a region of space that was supposed to be empty. "This is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Human Independent Fleet," the message began. The woman who appeared on the display wore a uniform that Kethvar didn't recognize, and there was something subtly different about her appearance. Her eyes seemed to reflect light in a way that biological eyes shouldn't, and, when she moved, there was an precision that suggested cybernetic enhancement. "Admiral Kethvar, we're transmitting coordinates for a meeting location. There are matters we need to discuss regarding the current state of galactic security." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew in stunned silence. "Hi Commander," Kethvar said carefully, "I don't recognize Captain Mitchell from any of our diplomatic files on human military personnel." "Neither do we," Zextel replied. "In fact, according to our records, every human military officer we had previous contact with has simply vanished. New personnel have appeared in their place, using different ranks, different ship designs, and, apparently different capabilities." The meeting coordinates appeared on the tactical display, indicating a location in neutral space near the border between Zephyrian and human territories. What made the location unusual was that sensors showed nothing there, no ships, no stations, no energy signatures of any kind. "This could be a trap," the tactical officer warned. "Everything is a trap now," Kethvar replied grimly. "The question is whether we can afford not to spring it." 6 hours later, Admiral Kethvar's command ship approached the designated coordinates. Long-range sensors still showed empty space, but, as they drew closer, the universe seemed to fold in on itself. Reality twisted, space-time curved, and, suddenly, a massive structure materialized around them. It wasn't a ship in any conventional sense. The structure appeared to be constructed from crystallized space-time itself, creating geometries that hurt to look at directly. Corridors and chambers existed in dimensions that shouldn't have been accessible to three-dimensional beings, yet somehow the Zephyrian crew found they could navigate them without difficulty. Captain Mitchell was waiting for them in what appeared to be a conference room, though the walls displayed real-time images of distant galaxies and the table seemed to be made from compressed neutron star material. She wasn't alone. Around the table sat beings that looked human at first glance, but each carried subtle modifications that marked them as something more. "Admiral Kethvar," Captain Mitchell said as the Zephyrian delegation entered. "Thank you for coming. I believe you've met Commander Chen." Kethvar recognized the woman who had once been Ambassador Sarah Chen, though she too had changed. Her eyes now held depths that seemed to contain entire star systems, and, when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated with quantum frequencies. "The situation in the galaxy has deteriorated more rapidly than we anticipated," Sarah began. "The Council's inability to maintain order is creating opportunities for hostile forces that pose threats to everyone, including humanity." Admiral Kethvar's form shifted to questioning patterns. "What hostile forces?" "Our intelligence hasn't detected any external threats." The humans exchanged glances that contained entire conversations transmitted at lightspeed through cybernetic links. Captain Mitchell gestured, and the conference room's displays showed regions of space beyond the galactic rim. "The Devourers weren't eliminated 5 years ago," she explained. "They were driven back. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive fleet movements in dark space. They're planning another invasion, and, this time they're bringing reinforcements from other realities." The images showed creatures of living shadow moving between dimensions, consuming entire star systems and converting the energy into more of themselves. The scale of the approaching fleet was beyond anything the galaxy had faced before. "Why should we trust this information?" Kethvar asked. "For all we know, this could be human propaganda designed to make us dependent on your protection again." Sarah smiled sadly. "Admiral, if we wanted the galaxy under our control, we wouldn't need elaborate schemes. We could simply take it. The room's display shifted to show real-time images of human fleets moving through space. Ships that phased between dimensions, weapons that could ignite supernovas, defensive systems that converted incoming attacks into usable energy. The technology gap between humans and the rest of the galaxy had become an unbridgeable chasm. Then, why warn us at all? Kethvar demanded. Because despite everything, we don't want to watch the galaxy burn, Captain Mitchell replied. Many of us still feel connections to the civilizations we once served alongside. And, frankly, a galaxy full of devourer-consumed worlds wouldn't be pleasant for anyone to live in. Admiral Kethvar studied the tactical displays showing the approaching threat. What are you proposing? A new arrangement, Sarah said. Not the old council system where everyone pretended to be equals while relying on human support. Something more honest. She gestured, and the display showed a new kind of galactic organization. Human forces would handle large-scale threats and provide advanced technologies, while other species would govern their own territories and manage local affairs. It wasn't the partnership of equals that the old council had pretended to be, but it was a partnership nonetheless. You're talking about a protectorate system, Kethvar observed. We're talking about survival, Captain Mitchell corrected. The universe is a dangerous place, Admiral. It's full of things that want to eat your consciousness, unravel your reality, or convert your entire species into raw materials for cosmic engineering projects. The old system worked because humans were willing to face those threats. The new system would work because we'd be honest about the arrangement. The Admiral's crystalline form flickered through complex patterns as he considered the proposal. It was humiliating to admit that the Zephyrian Confederation couldn't defend itself without human help. But it was also realistic. The past 3 months had made it clear that none of the galaxy's major powers could fill the role that humans had been quietly playing for decades. What would you require in exchange for this protection, he asked. Territory for human expansion, access to unique resources that other species control, and recognition of human sovereignty in our claimed regions, Sarah replied. In exchange, we'll maintain galactic security, share selected technologies, and provide emergency response to existential threats. It was a better deal than Kethvar had expected. The humans could have simply demanded tribute or complete submission. Instead, they were offering a genuine partnership, albeit one where the power balance was openly acknowledged. I'll need to consult with my government, Kethvar said. Of course, Captain Mitchell replied. But don't take too long. Our deep space monitors indicate the Devourer fleets will reach the galactic rim within 18 months. If the galaxy is going to mount an effective defense, preparations need to begin soon. As the Zephyrian delegation prepared to leave, Sarah approached Admiral Kethvar privately. Admiral, there's something else you should know. The human withdrawal from the Council wasn't just about respect or recognition. We've discovered something about the galaxy's long-term future that changes everything. She handed him a data crystal that seemed to contain more information than should have been physically possible. The galaxy is dying, she said simply. Not immediately, not in any timescale that biological civilizations would normally worry about, but the fundamental forces that hold space-time together are slowly degrading. Within 10 million years, maybe less, the entire local galactic group will become uninhabitable. Admiral Kethvar's form went completely dark. How can you possibly know that? Because we've been building the infrastructure necessary to do something about it, Sarah replied. The massive construction projects in the Dark Nebula regions aren't just mining operations or military bases. They're the foundation for technologies that could stabilize reality itself, or potentially evacuate entire civilizations to more stable regions of the universe. She paused, letting the magnitude of the revelation settle over him. The Council system couldn't handle that kind of project. Too much politics, too much competition, too much focus on short-term territorial disputes. But a unified galactic civilization with human technological capabilities might actually have a chance. Admiral Kethvar left the meeting with his worldview fundamentally changed. The humans weren't just offering protection from immediate threats. They were offering a path toward long-term species survival on a cosmic scale. The question was whether the galaxy's civilizations were wise enough to accept it. Back at Zephyrian High Command, Admiral Kethvar presented his report to the full military council. The debate that followed lasted 3 days, but the conclusion was inevitable. The Zephyrian Confederation formally requested to join the Human Protection Arrangement, becoming the first major power to acknowledge the new galactic reality. Within weeks, other species followed. The Harmony Singers eagerly accepted human protection, grateful for any alternative to Silicon Brotherhood aggression. The mining consortiums and trade unions signed economic partnerships that guaranteed their safety in exchange for resource access. Even some of the Council's former major powers began reaching out through back channels, testing the waters for possible arrangements. The Galactic Council still existed, but its sessions had become exercises in managing decline. Chancellor Vextar presided over debates about resource rationing and defensive alliances, while the real decisions about galactic security were made in facilities that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The galaxy was learning to function in a new paradigm. Humans had left the table, but they hadn't abandoned their responsibilities. They had simply stopped pretending that those responsibilities were shared equally among species with vastly different capabilities. And, as the first Devourer scout ships began probing the galaxy's outer defenses, encountering human monitoring stations that had been waiting for them, the wisdom of this new arrangement became clear. The galaxy would survive, but only because humanity had finally stopped asking for permission to save it. The Battle of the Galactic Rim would be remembered as the day the universe learned what humanity had become. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of the Prometheus Ascendant, a vessel that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously and commanded firepower equivalent to a small galaxy's total energy output. Around her, thousands of human officers worked at stations that interfaced directly with their enhanced nervous systems, processing information at speeds that approached the fundamental limits of causality itself. Devourer fleet composition confirmed, reported Commander Zhang, whose consciousness currently existed as a distributed network across 12 different bodies throughout the ship. We're looking at approximately 47 million Devourer entities, plus support structures that our sensors can't fully categorize. The main display showed the approaching threat in all its terrible glory. The Devourers had learned from their previous defeat, arriving not as individual predators but as a coordinated swarm that moved like a single organism. Each entity was the size of a small moon, composed of living shadow that consumed matter, energy, and even the fundamental forces that held atoms together. Galactic Defense Fleet status? Admiral Vasquez asked. All allied species have withdrawn to secondary defensive positions as requested, reported the tactical coordinator. Zephyrian forces are maintaining perimeter security around inhabited systems. Krogan battle groups are protecting the industrial sectors. The Harmony Singers have evacuated to the inner spiral arms. It was the same pattern that had emerged over the past 18 months since humanity's formal withdrawal from the Galactic Council. Other species handled local security and governance while human forces dealt with threats that exceeded conventional capabilities. The arrangement had worked well during the preparation phase, but this would be its ultimate test. "Ma'am," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the Devourer Collective." Admiral Vasquez had expected this. The Devourers weren't mindless predators. They were an ancient intelligence that had consumed countless galaxies over cosmic history, and they always offered their victims a chance to surrender before the feeding began. Put it through. The main display shifted to show something that hurt to look at directly. The Devourer spokesperson existed as a shifting pattern of absence, a creature-shaped hole in reality that spoke in frequencies that bypassed the ears and transmitted meaning directly into the brain. "Young builders," the entity communicated, its voice carrying the weight of eons. "You have grown since our last encounter. Your modifications to spacetime itself show promise. But you still cling to the failing structures of this dying reality." Admiral Vasquez activated her own communication array, her words carried by quantum entanglement to every ship in the human fleet. "We remember you as well, Ancient One. You retreated when we burned out 3 of your hive minds during the last incursion. Have you forgotten that lesson already?" "We have brought reinforcements," the Devourer replied. "Entities from 17 different realities, including some that have learned to consume the concept of existence itself. Your previous victory was achieved through surprise. Now we understand your capabilities." The display showed the true scope of the Devourer force. Behind the visible fleet lurked things that existed between dimensions, predators that fed on the information patterns that defined reality, and, worst of all, a massive structure that appeared to be a weaponized black hole surrounded by creatures made from the event horizon itself. Submit TO consumption, the Devourer continued. Your consciousness will be preserved within our collective. Your knowledge will become part of the eternal hunger. Your species will achieve a form of immortality. Admiral Vasquez smiled, and her expression was transmitted across every human ship in the fleet. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the expression of a species that had spent 50 years preparing for exactly this moment. Counteroffer, she replied. Turn around and leave this galaxy immediately. In exchange, we won't demonstrate why we're called the apex predators of local spacetime. The Devourer's response was a sound that translated as cosmic laughter. Impressive confidence for a species that still requires physical matter for existence. Very well. Let us see how your modifications have progressed. The transmission ended, and both fleets began moving toward their inevitable collision. Fleet status report, Admiral Vasquez ordered. All human vessels report ready, Commander Zhang announced. Deep space monitoring stations have confirmed no additional Devourer forces approaching from other vectors. The experimental weapons platforms are fully charged. The reality anchors are deployed and stable. What about our non-human allies? Any changes in their positioning? The Zephyrian Confederation has requested permission to observe the battle from long range. Admiral Kethvar specifically asked to witness what humanity has become firsthand. Several other species have made similar requests. Admiral Vasquez considered this. The battle would certainly be educational for the galaxy's other civilizations. Let them see exactly what kind of protection they had been living under for the past 50 years. Grant permission for observation, but maintain minimum safe distance of 50 light-years. If any of the Devourer's exotic weapons breach our defensive perimeter, I don't want collateral damage to our allies. The human fleet began its approach formation. To outside observers, it might have looked small compared to the massive Devourer swarm. Only 400 ships against millions of enemies. But appearances in space combat could be deceiving, especially when one side had spent decades developing technologies that operated on principles the enemy couldn't comprehend. Enemy contact in 30 seconds, the tactical officer reported. Devourers are beginning their dissolution attacks. The first wave of Devourer assault wasn't kinetic weapons or energy beams. It was an attack on the fundamental forces that held matter together. Space around the human fleet began to shimmer as the Devourers attempted to unravel the strong nuclear force, causing atoms to simply fall apart. Reality anchors holding, reported the defense coordinator. Local spacetime remains stable. Initiating counterattack sequence. The Prometheus Ascendant fired its primary weapon, and the universe screamed. The weapon didn't exist in normal space. It reached across dimensional barriers to strike at the quantum information patterns that defined the Devourer entity's existence. Where it hit, the creatures didn't just die, they ceased to ever have existed, leaving holes in causality that had to be quickly patched by the ship's reality maintenance systems. Direct hit on the enemy command structure, Commander Zhang reported. Estimated 30,000 Devourer entities deleted from local timeline. But the Devourers had learned from their previous encounter. Instead of clustering together, they dispersed across multiple dimensions, making it impossible to target large groups simultaneously. They also began adapting their attack patterns, switching from dissolution beams to something far more dangerous. Warning, the ship's AI announced, its voice carrying harmonics that indicated extreme concern. Detecting paradox weapons. The enemy is attempting to create temporal loops that will prevent our ships from ever having been constructed. This was the Devourer's most feared ability, attacks that struck backward through time to prevent their enemies from existing in the first place. It was how they had eliminated entire galactic civilizations without firing a single conventional weapon. Activate temporal shielding, Admiral Vasquez ordered. All ships, implement causality locks. The human response to temporal warfare was typically human in its approach, they simply refused to allow time travel to work. Each ship carried generators that created zones of locked causality, regions where cause and effect became immutable regardless of external manipulation. It was technology that violated several fundamental laws of physics, but humans had stopped caring about theoretical limitations centuries ago. Temporal attacks deflected, the defense coordinator reported. Enemy forces are adapting their strategy. Detecting probability manipulation weapons. The next attack was even more exotic. The Devourers began altering the statistical likelihood that human weapons would function correctly. Missiles that should have hit their targets suddenly developed improbable guidance failures. Energy weapons that had operated perfectly for centuries began experiencing impossible power fluctuations. Probability shields online, Commander Zhang announced. Local quantum mechanics locked to baseline universal constants. Admiral Vasquez watched the tactical display as the battle escalated into realms of physics that most civilizations couldn't even theoretically understand. Both sides were fighting with weapons that attacked the fundamental structures of reality itself, each trying to rewrite the basic laws that governed existence. "Ma'am," the communications officer said, "we're receiving panic transmissions from the observing fleets. Several species are requesting immediate withdrawal to greater distances." Admiral Vasquez could understand their fear. The battle was taking place on scales and using principles that made conventional space warfare look like children playing with toy soldiers. Weapons were being deployed that could accidentally destroy entire star systems if they malfunctioned. "Grant their withdrawal requests," she ordered. "And transmit full recordings of the engagement to all allied species. They should understand exactly what we're protecting them from." The battle reached its climax when the Devourers deployed their ultimate weapon, the weaponized black hole they had brought from another reality. The massive structure began warping spacetime on a galactic scale, creating gravitational effects that threatened to tear apart nearby star systems. "That thing is generating tidal forces that could destabilize the entire spiral arm," the tactical officer reported. Estimated time until critical damage to inhabited systems, 47 minutes. Admiral Vasquez nodded grimly. This was why humanity had built the installations in the dark nebula regions, why they had spent decades developing technologies that other species considered impossible. This was the moment they had been preparing for. "Activate the stellar engineering array," she commanded. "All ships, implement Protocol Omega." Across human space, massive installations that had been hidden in the hearts of stars suddenly activated. They reached out across vast distances, linking together in a network that spanned thousands of light years. The energy they commanded was equivalent to the total output of 1 billion suns, focused through technologies that treated the laws of physics as mere suggestions. "Array online," Commander Zhang reported, his voice carrying notes of awe even after years of working with impossible human technology. "Ready to implement large-scale reality modification. Target, the enemy's weaponized singularity," Admiral Vasquez ordered. "Objective, complete existence failure." The stellar engineering array fired, and the fabric of spacetime rewrote itself. The weaponized black hole, a structure that had consumed the matter of entire galaxies, simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not dispersed, but retroactively edited out of the universe's operating code. The Devourer swarm, suddenly, deprived of their ultimate weapon, found themselves facing a human fleet that was no longer bothering to hold back. Ships that had been fighting defensively suddenly revealed offensive capabilities that defied rational explanation. Reality itself seemed to bend around human weapons, ensuring that every shot found its target regardless of distance, probability, or dimensional barriers. "Enemy fleet cohesion is breaking down," the tactical officer reported. Detecting panic responses from Devourer command structures. But Admiral Vasquez wasn't finished. The Devourers had threatened the galaxy, and they needed to understand that such threats would not be tolerated. "Open a communication channel to the surviving Devourer entities," she ordered. "Impossible," came the response when the channel connected. The stellar engineering array was theoretical. "Our calculations suggested no species could generate sufficient energy to operate such a system." "Your calculations were wrong," Admiral Vasquez replied simply. "Now you have a choice. You can retreat to whatever reality you came from and never return, or we can demonstrate what happens when humans stop holding back." To emphasize the point, she activated a demonstration that had been prepared specifically for this moment. The stellar engineering array reached out to a nearby empty star system and, in full view of both the Devourer fleet and the observing alien vessels, began rearranging matter on a stellar scale. Planets were moved like chess pieces. The star itself was reconfigured, its fusion processes modified to burn in patterns that spelled out mathematical equations in multiple galactic languages. Within minutes, an entire solar system had been transformed into a monument to human technological capability. "We understand," the Devourer spokesperson finally replied. "This galaxy is under your protection. We withdraw." The massive swarm began its retreat, moving back toward the dimensional barriers they had emerged from. But Admiral Vasquez wasn't quite finished with them. "Before you go," she said, "carry a message back to whatever collective intelligence sent you. This galaxy is no longer a feeding ground. It's a reservation where interesting species are allowed to develop under human protection. Any future incursions will result in us taking a more aggressive stance toward your home realities." "Acknowledged," the Devourer replied, and the last of their fleet vanished into dimensional space. Silence settled over the battlefield, broken only by the routine communications traffic of human ships returning to their patrol routes. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced had been defeated with such overwhelming force that it bordered on casual dismissal. "Ma'am," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving transmission requests from 47 different species. Most are requesting immediate diplomatic meetings to discuss expansion of human protection agreements." Admiral Vasquez smiled. The demonstration had been even more effective than she had hoped. The galaxy's civilizations had just seen what human protection actually meant, and they understood that no conventional force could threaten them while humanity maintained its guardian role. "Schedule the meetings," she ordered. "But make it clear that our terms have changed. After this demonstration, I think we can expect more cooperative negotiations." In the weeks that followed, the balance of galactic power shifted dramatically. Species that had been reluctant to acknowledge human supremacy now competed to offer the most favorable partnership terms. The old Galactic Council was formally dissolved, replaced by a human protection authority that managed galactic affairs with efficiency the Council had never achieved. More importantly, the true scope of human development began to be revealed to their allies. The installations in the dark nebula regions were just the beginning. Humans had been building infrastructure that spanned multiple galaxies, preparing for threats that operated on cosmic scales. The stellar engineering array was actually a minor defensive system compared to the projects being developed for long-term species survival. The galaxy settled into a new era of stability and growth under human guardianship. Other species focused on their cultural development, scientific research, and territorial governance while humans handled the large-scale threats and infrastructure that made such pursuits possible. And, in the depths of space, new construction projects began that would eventually allow the entire galactic community to survive the heat death of the universe itself. Projects that would have been impossible under the old system of competing nation-states and suspicious alliances. Humanity had left the table where they had been treated as junior partners. In return, they had built a table large enough for every species in the galaxy, with themselves at the head where they belonged. The galaxy had learned to quake in dread when humans withdrew their protection. Now it could rest easy knowing that protection was stronger than ever, backed by technologies that treated the impossible as merely improbable. The age of human guardianship had begun, and the universe would never be the same.